أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الذي لا يبلغ مدحته القائلون ولا يحصي نعماءه العادون ولا يؤدي حقه المجتحدون الذي لا يدركه بعد الحمم ولا يناله غوص الفطن ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين حبيب قلوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا وشفيع ذنوبنا سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم وآل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين صاحب العصر والزمان خليفة الرحمن إمام الإنس والجان ولعن الله أعداهم أجمعين إلى يوم الدين أما بعد فقد قال الله وقوله الحق بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ولا تكونوا كالذين نسوا الله فأنساهم أنفسهم أولئك هم الفاسقون صدق الله العلي العظيم اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. Last night we began our topic for the next few weeks now, a few days now, or the next 2 weeks now until the end of the month of Ramadan, where we will be looking at this idea of the view from within, a little bit of analysis of the self, of who I am. What is this I we talk about, the I-ness of the insan. And yesterday, as a introductory discussion, we talked about the fact that, and the example that we'll be using all throughout these lectures is of a journey. You know, a suluk, a sayr, a salik, a suluk, of course, being the path, the sayr being the journey, and the salik being the journey person, or journeyman. An example that we used, if you remember last night, we used this example that when we go on to a long drive, let's say we go cross country, from Toronto, where I am right now, live coming to you, across the country to Vancouver, let's say, for example. And I mentioned last night that long of a journey, it's important that you reach your destination. So what do? You check the vehicle, you check the car, you make sure that the wasila on your journey, right, the avenue, the transport, the mode that will bring you to your destination is sahih, salim, is working. You understand its limitations. Right. The example I gave was checking the brakes of the car before you go on this, this cross-country drive, checking the oil, checking the fluids, making sure that, knowing how fast can it go, how many hours until I give it a break. All these things are important for you to know that this, may not be the actual destination, but this is a tool I'm using to get to my destination. Equally, we also are on a journey, a metaphysical journey, right? A metaphorical journey towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, a spiritual one that is outside the realm of this Mahdi and this materialistic world. And just like we examine the car and we know the car inside and out that travels from Toronto to Vancouver, equally we must know the vehicle that we are using to get to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That vehicle is me, the self. Me and my intricate dimensions and departments and powers and details that exist inside of me, all of them are used to get towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So naturally, if we want to get to Allah at a certain level, with a certain level of success, then we have to understand the vehicle that we're using to get to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And without this knowledge, the margin of error increases. So without you knowing exactly what kind of car you're driving to Vancouver, it could be that halfway through your journey, your car breaks down and then you give up on that journey. Sometimes we don't understand ourselves, right? We don't understand the power we have, the strength we have, the courage we have, right? Because remember, to further along this journey idea, that we have to be able to understand that this vehicle, this car, will be able to uphold many things. Because from here to Vancouver, there's mountain driving, there's rough terrain, there's speed bumps, there's very beautiful paved areas, right? There might be rocks, there might be gravel, there might be huge potholes. And this vehicle has to be able to withstand and withhold all of these various challenges that come from here until Vancouver. Equally, we as well have to understand the journey from me towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is filled with hardships and difficulties and rain and storms and beautiful sunny days. Well, on the drive towards Allah, we will hit big potholes. We will hit bumpy roads. We will hit this scenery that is breathtaking. We will see the sun rise and we'll be caught in a rainstorm. We'll see the rainbow, for example, and we'll be in utter darkness in the middle of the night. Whatever the case may be, we have to be able to know that through all of these various dimensions of the journey, the self, the vehicle, is able to get through all of the various dimensions. Without that knowledge, we won't get to our destination. Or God forbid, we start our destination, halfway through we give up, make a U-turn, just say forget it, or we end up getting into another car. And so that's why sometimes, during the hardships and difficulties of this world, that's where people begin now to deviate off the path of Islam. Right in the middle of that storm, right when the road gets a little bit bumpy, they're off the road altogether. Because they didn't have the proper knowledge of the self. And I talked about the fact that to understand the various dimensions and polarizing forces inside of me also helps me to identify how to be a true slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We can't have it both ways, right? We can't be somebody who is, who is a part of this dunya, who is very much involved in this dunya, who's attached to the dunya, in the same breath, in the same heart, on the same individual. We also have the attachment to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One has to give. One has to give. You cannot gain both worlds. You cannot lose both worlds. That is a huge loss, right? خَسْرَ الدُّنْيَا وَالْآخِرَةِ ذَلِكَ هُوَ خُسْرَانٌ مُبِينٌ, the Quran says. The one who loses the dunya and the akhirah, that is a monumental loss. So when Imam Ali says that the sweetness of this world is the bitterness of the next, and the sweetness of the next world is the bitterness of this world, these two cannot mix together. Okay? So that was my discussion yesterday as a introductory discussion. Today I want to introduce, first of all, my base verse that I'll be using from now until the end of this month from Surah Hashr. Surah Hashr is the 59th chapter of the Quran, verse number 19. A rather famous verse, but one, of course, that fits our topic very well. I want to expand on that a little bit and then introduce this idea of defining what I is or who I is, the I-ness inside of me. What do I mean when I say that we should know who we are? I should know who I am. What is that I am referring to? Let's examine that tonight, inshallah. So first of all, the verse. Surah Hashr, verse number 19. It's amazing. This is the month of the Quran. Inshallah, Allah accept all of your tilawat. This is the month where really we have to truly focus the Quran. If that means we extract stories, if that means we extract themes, if that means that we just do tilawat, or we look at tafsir, let's say for the first time, then so be it. As the Prophet has said, one verse of the Quran read in this month is equal to an entire Quran read in other months. Can you imagine now? So a lot of you have this beautiful habit of reciting the entire Quran in the month of Ramadan. 30 days, 30 juz, 1 juz per day. Right? Imagine now, 6,000 plus verses in the Quran. In the month of Ramadan, those 6,000 verses become 6,000 Qurans in the other 11 months of the Islamic calendar. That's barakat. Those are blessings that we cannot simply let fall through our fingertips. Maybe 1 juz is very hard. A lot of you are working very hard, right? A lot of you have to homeschool your kids. A lot of you have to look after things at home. Now things are a little bit different in the month of Ramadan now. Fine. If 1 juz is hard, that's fine. But let's spend some time with the Quran itself. In the Quran now, amazingly, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sometimes talks very general, very very kulli, right? He talks in, sort of like a rooftop, a view of entirety. Okay. Sometimes he gives very, very specific examples. And those examples sometimes are those examples of people that you should be like and people that you should not be like. Sometimes he mentions exact individuals who you should emulate. So not only is it a book that he wishes for us to guide ourselves with, but he actually puts examples of individuals and groups of people in the book to simply make our job easier. Look, if you want to be somebody who attains the pleasure of Allah, try to emulate her path or his path. If you want to invoke the wrath of Allah, emulate their path. And he actually spells out what they do wrong or what they do right in the actual book. One example, for example, is Surah Tahrim. Surah Tahrim, verse number 11, talks about the various wives and various women inside of this surah. And verse number 11 talks about the wife of Pharaoh. Allah says flat out, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, وَضَرَبَ اللَّهُ مَثَلًا لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا أَمْرَأَةَ فِرْعَوْنَ. That Allah now has given you an example. Allah now says, وَضَرَبَ اللَّهُ. Allah has given an example of what? For who? Of the example of the mithal for لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. For people like you and I who have faith. Of who? Of the wife of Pharaoh. Right? إذ قالت, when she said, Ya Rabbi ibni li indaka baytan fil Jannah. Oh Allah, build a house for me in Jannah, indaka, close to you, near you. Right? Free me from Fir'aun wa amalihi and his works, wa najri min qawmi al-zalimin, and free me from the nation who are oppressive. Right? The fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala now has included this dua inside of the Quran of someone like Bibi Asiya, who had the jur'at and the gall and the courage to ask not just for Jannah, not for a house in Jannah, but for a house indaka, close to you, Allah, in proximity of you. That's a big dua. But why is it that Allah not only, we assume, grants that dua, because of the very existence of this verse, but he uses as an example for you and I, لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. This is an example for those who believe. For those who believe, it's an example. What's the example? That if you are able to do what Baby Asiya did, then you also will have the gall and the audacity and the courage and the itminan qalb and the certainty to be able to ask Allah for something that's monumental. This is Allah. Allah makes the impossible possible, right? He's La Mahdud. Nothing is too big in his kingdom. We have to find that courage to ask him with our own amal. Who was Bibi Asiya? Very quickly, she was that woman who didn't live in a corrupt society. She was married to the Fir'aun of her society. And usually when you're married to somebody, you adopt their habits, you adopt their thinking, you adopt their style of life, everything. But here we have, as corrupt as he was, as much of a mushrik as he was, she didn't allow her husband of all people to be with him 24 hours a day to affect her iman. Right? Equally for us as well, living in a Pharaonic society, right? A society of Fir'auniyat. For us now to be able to be not affected by the arrogance and the pride and the oppression and the and the challenging of God, and still hold on to our iman, allows us to ask for that dua. That's one example of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala using a specific example, a specific person to tell us exactly how to be. The other group is the verse I read for you in the khutbah, and is the base of our group. Allah says, do not be like those. وَلَا تَكُونُوا كَالَّذِينَ. Don't be like those who what? نَسُوا اللَّهَ فَأَنْسَاهُمْ أَنفُسَهُمْ. Oh, scary. Do not be like those who have forgotten Allah to the point فَأَنْسَاهُمْ أَنفُسَهُمْ, that they have forgotten about themselves. He's making a very clear distinction, or a very clear connection, between forgetting Allah and forgetting yourself. Don't be like those. Where you have now, you've become so ghafil, so heedless, so forgetful, this nisyan, this musalsal negligence towards Allah, to the point where now he's forgotten about yourself. What does that mean? It's one thing where I know that I have forgotten about God. I don't remember him when I sin, for example, when I skip my salat, when I don't do good. Naturally, I've forgotten about him. What does it mean to forget about me? Because the ending of the verse is also very dangerous. Ulaika humul fasiqun. These are people who are the fasiq, openly sin. So again, this connection, Allah says that you forget me, I will make you forget yourself. When you forget yourself, you become somebody who's a fasiq, an open sinner. So it's obvious to someone like me, maybe to all of you as well, that sometimes now, when we do sin, and Tafsir says, not me, Tafsir says, that when we do sin, we have forgotten ourselves because we sinned. When we go back towards Allah in tawbah and repentance, we've once again remembered ourself. You would think for a second, wait a second now. Tawbah is me remembering God. That's why I turn back to Him. God says, no. God says, remember, going back and identifying you've done something wrong is restoring yourself to yourself. And then that self causes you to go back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Just like that self caused you to forget Allah and do that open sin. So we're dealing with a very, very monumental, a very important knowledge of the self, of I, of me, right? And if this is a vehicle, if it is a wasila for me to get towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I want to make sure it's as strong as possible. Think about, again, I go back to my journey example, right? Vancouver, across the country, or for my American friends who are right now listening, from let's say New Jersey all the way down to California, you're driving. Cross country, from northeast all the way down to southwest. You want to make sure that the vehicle you're in is strong. Right? So if it's not strong, you might even spend some money, put some extra tires on there, fill up the liquids, for example, make sure it's nice and strong, add this, add that, so you continue to what? Build and build and build that car to make sure that it's going to get me to my destination. Precisely what self-building is, khudsazi is. You're building yourself, you're building you as a vehicle towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So yes, we will examine as subtopics in these next few weeks those factors that destroy the self, the ego, right? Narcissism, the lack of forgiveness. Or we'll examine those things that actually help build the self, like forgiveness, love and compassion, right? Courage, patience, forbearance. Those are all things we'll discuss bit by bit, one by one. We're dealing with a very important identity inside of ourselves as that vehicle towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'll say it 50 more times, you'll get used to it. Okay? So let's first now determine tonight, this is just my intro now, 20 minutes in, what is the I? When I say I, what does that mean? And I'll use a book by Agha Misbah Yazdi. It's a Hausa book that we are taught in the first year, second year of the Hausa when it comes to ilm kalam, theology, called Amuzish Aqaid, Theological Instructions. Okay, it's also a book that sometimes I have classes here in the city as well. In there, he defines, in the discussion on Ma'ad, discussion on the Day of Judgment, it's a 60-lesson book. It's a textbook that's rather thick. It's been broken down to 3 volumes, and it goes through all the 5 roots of the madhab, the last one being Ma'ad, the Day of Judgment. In that, one of the first opening discussions in the chapter on the Day of Judgment is the idea of Ruh Mujarrad. Identifying the fact that what am I? This I, who is it? What is it? How can I define it? And he gives a very beautiful example. And let me share that example with all of you as well. Now, I know it's a lot to ask right now, an hour before iftar time for you to give me this much of your brain when your stomach is that empty. But inshallah, as a distraction, we'll do our best to understand a little bit of this concept. Agha Misbah says that there is this unifying factor in every stage of your physical life. I'll give you an example. Let's say, for example, I'll give you my example, okay? I am born, let's say, okay? Born in Toronto, I'm born. So I am a newborn baby, okay? A cute, adorable newborn baby. I was the cutest newborn baby in my whole family. You can ask anybody, even my siblings. I was pink. I was just, my mom thought that this was something that came from heaven. And it probably was. That's why there's nude also on this side, sometimes nude on that side, and now there's nude on, it's nur ala nur, kya karoon, khair. Beautiful, beautiful baby boy. And then that beautiful baby boy became a very cute toddler. Okay, another very cute toddler. I went from gold to gold, from lap to lap. What can you do, right? You want to pick up this cute child, right? Toddler. And then I become, this adolescent, and then a teenager, and then a young man, and then a wise younger man. and then an old man, and then a senior, inshallah. Every stage of my life, my physical body, there is an immense amount of change. Please follow me. An immense amount of change. And to the point where sometimes when we compare our grandparents for what they look now to when they were born or when they were young, we can barely recognize them. Whoa, is that you, Dada? Is that you, Nana, with the sideburns and the bell bottoms? Yeah, it was me. Oh my God, look at your fashion. You know, sometimes we can't tell whose baby picture it is, right? So is that you? Is that me? Right? That's how much we've changed, right? Looking at our, I don't know, yearbook photos when we were in high school or public school, you know, many, many years ago, to the point where, oh my God, I can't believe that was you. To the point where the physical change is so drastic that the person becomes unrecognizable. You think about an 85-year-old Asad Jafri and a 3-year-old Asad Jafri. It's going to be Zamin Osman the way I look, right? And so, but yet every stage that I have gone through, be it the fact when I was an adorable, irresistible newborn baby, to when I was an adorable, cute young man, to now that I'm a handsome, wise, older man, okay? And a very humble one, obviously, at that. But one thing that we cannot say is that there were various versions of me. We can't say that was Asad Jafri the newborn, this is Asad Jafri the teenager, this is Asad Jafri the older man, this is Asad Jafri the senior, that's Asad Jafri the mayyit, for example. No. Every step of the way, no matter how physically different I look, every single stage is me. Okay? That's me as a newborn. That's me as a 3-year-old. That's me as a 10-year-old. That's me as an awkward 15-year-old. That's me as a 21-year-old. That's me as a 40, 50, 80, 90, inshallah, 115-year-old. That's me. That unifying factor that is existent in all physical changes and physical movements of the life of the human being, that unifying factor of me is the I inside the human being. That's the I. That's the I-ness I really want to focus on. Right? That's what defines us. What defines us is not the color of the beard, or the fact that I haven't had a fade in over a month and I'm dying to have a haircut right now. Not that. Not the fact that, you know, what defines me, for example, is my fashion when I was 15, 16 years old. What defines me in the deen, what defines me and the I, is that unifying factor that Asad Jafri in every stage of my life. No matter how different I may look, I'm the exact same person. That exact same person level is the I inside of me. That's the I-ness I'm talking about. That's the I, that's the man, that's the me, right? Can't be measured by physical body, can't be measured by clothes, can't be measured by smell or taste through the eyes. No, right? It's mujarrad, it's metaphysical by nature. Okay? It's not like this is version 1, version 2.0, version 3.8, version 8.9. No, the exact same person all throughout, extremely different way of looking physically, which means that our identity, our essence, our thought is I, not this physical being. That's why when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave the hukum for sajda to those around Adam, He didn't do it after He gave him a bodily form. The Quran is very clear in saying, وَإِذَا سَوَيْتُ وَنَفَخْتُ فِيهِ مِنْ رُوحِي فَقَعُوا لَهُ سَاجِدِينَ. I gave him, you know, وَإِذَا سَوَيْتُ, I gave him surat, I gave him a bodily form. Allah saying to Adam, I mean, I gave him a physical, I gave him arms and legs and a head. And then I blew into him from my spirit. وَنَفَخْتُ فِيهِ مِنْ رُوحِي, from my spirit I blew into him. Meaning that spirit cannot be measured by anything that's physical, right? Not naturally. At that moment, the moment the spirit went into this body, فَقَوْ لَهُ سَاجِدِينَ, then now do sajda. Now this insan has become qabil sajda. Now he is worthy of being called ashraf makhluqat, the best of Allah's creation. Not before that. It's not like Allah says, وَإِذَا سَوَيْتُهُ فَقَوْ لَهُ سَاجِدِينَ. I gave him a body, now fall in sajda. Who cares about the body? Body is important. The car is important, no doubt. The tires are important. But the true portion of that car is what? Is the engine. You can't see the engine, right? It's hidden behind the hood. Unless you pop it up and something is wrong, then actually check the engine. Again, I'll use that journey example all throughout. You'll get sick of the example, but it's a reason why. That's ulama, the urafa use that example. Okay, so this I-ness I refer to refers to this unifying factor that can be seen in all aspects of the existence. So anytime you see that, you see qalb, right? You see qalb, right? يَوْمَ لَا يَنْفَعُ مَالٌ وَلَا بَنُونَ إِلَّا مَنْ أَتَى اللَّهَ بِقَلْبٍ سَلِيمٍ. On that day, on the day of judgment, nothing will benefit you, not your mal, not your banu, not your children. What will is those who present themselves in front of Allah with a qalb salim, with a sahih and salim and a healthy heart. Does it mean this beating heart inside of me that's going to stop one day? It doesn't mean that. That qalb means one dimension of the I inside of me. So now we go back to our base verse, right? وَلَا تَكُونُوا كَالَّذِينَ نَسُوا اللَّهَ فَأَنْسَاهُمْ أَنفُسَهُمْ. That don't be like those that have forgotten Allah, forsaked Allah, have become ghafil towards Allah to the point where He's made them forget about themselves. Not that you forget eating and forget sleeping and forget resting and forget putting on your clothes. No, that you forget that I inside of you. That's the I that's going to carry forward all throughout these worlds. When the body is buried, it's the I that continues on to the grave and barzakh. Okay, now that I has to be able to endure that journey of the grave and the barzakh. Has to have enough amal attached to it to be able now to take its suitcase and carry forward through its journey. That's why when you talk about salat and fasting and all these acts of worship, they have to break through the barrier of the physical and get to the metaphysical. They have to break through the idea of the physical form and get to the inner form. Break the exoteric, get to the esoteric. Break the zahir and include the batin. That's why salat, namaz, for example, quick example, that salat is accepted only when there's huzur qalb, or there is an internal presence, or somebody has the right motive to pray salat. It could be that two people are praying the exact same salat. Literally, they are in unison, going up and down, ruku, sujood, qiyam, bihawlillah, qunut, everything. The physical form is the exact same. But inside the heart of hearts, one does it fi sabilillah, and one does it fi sabilin nas, to show the people. One does it to please Allah. That's all batin, that's all the I. It's the I now that takes that salat and puts it inside suitcase. Grab suitcase now. The body is buried 6 feet under, and we move on to our grave, our barzakh, the day of judgment, with our suitcase in hand. It becomes monumental, right? It becomes huge. Right? God forbid that someone like me acts or does an act of worship in this world, and the only thing that act of worship attaches it to is my physical body. Imam Ali says that there are people who will fast and will only deprive themselves of food and water. That's it. The body will no longer feel full. The body will suffer from thirst and hunger during the month of Ramadan. But there's no sort of eyes fasting, ears fasting, tongue fasting. No, there isn't. Some people, maybe me, who knows? Right? If every act of worship attaches itself to the physical body, meaning the only thing that we upheld was the physical form. That's the only thing that we upheld. It didn't penetrate inside the heart. It didn't get to the I of me. It got to the physical form of me. So the problem with that is that when that physical body now gets buried, the amal get buried with that body. As the body decomposes, the amal also decompose with it. The I moves on, but the act of worship remains with the body. That becomes dust after a while. The hadith says that they blow like sand blows in the wind. Right? Like you have that sawdust and you blow and there's dust everywhere. That's sometimes how people will see their amal in the next world. And I don't mean to scare anybody, but the reality is that we cannot continue to neglect ourselves. We cannot, especially in this day and age. And why do I choose this topic? All of you know me very well who's listening to me. You know that I choose my topics very, very carefully. And I rack my brain about my topics. And I'm very sensitive about my topics because I want to make sure that given the su'ut hal, given the community for our faith. It's true. Month of Ramadan, of course we do. Think about for a moment. Like, you know, I went to a community last year and they have a certain way of doing things, right? They pray, you know, Maghrib, then they go and they break their fast, and then they go out inside and they pray Isha. Okay? So now you're sitting there with 300-400 people, let's say, in the dining hall, having iftar. Maybe you ate too much, maybe you ate a little bit too heavy, right? You hear the adhan of Isha going on, and you think, oh, I can't move right now. How am I going to pray 4 rakats? Like, I just feel sussed. I can't move right now. Right? Precisely why people sometimes do Maghrib Isha right away before iftar, even though it adds 5 minutes to their iftar time, is because afterwards I know I won't be able to move, Blana. So I just, you know, I do it in the beginning. Well, here, it's a community event. Right? Now you're sitting there at the table, at the dastakhan, just finished your iftar. People are now moving towards the namaz room. One by one, and it's all being empty, and you yourself are sitting there, or you maybe in a handful of people. It doesn't look good. Everyone's praying namaz inside, you're out there, prime Isha time right now, and you're out there just sitting there because you ate too much, for example, or you haven't finished your tea yet. So what do? You get up, you push yourself only because you see the rest of the community does. Same idea, right? Everyone's inside for dua iftatah. You're out there by the shoes. Go inside and sit for dua. Right? That communal pressure, which is very beautiful, by the way. I mean, it's one thing I truly miss in this month of Ramadan, right? We're sometimes, pulled in the most beautiful ways by that community to come and do what everyone else is doing. The difference is that this year we don't have that communal aspect, so we're pushing ourselves, right? Like if there are days that I have a full iftari, even if I've read Isha, the idea of a 25-minute dua iftatah is like, oh, it's really tiring right now. Maybe later. Later never comes. But if I was at the center and everyone is sitting there on the screen watching dua iftatah, I would sit there as well with dua iftatah, right? You get my point. So it's important that we now recapture ourselves. And this is the time to see, what is it that's pushing me, motivating me, right? Is it that the moment it's namaz time, I move, or am I moved by the community or by others? And it goes back to ourselves. And there are forces that want to push you to the musalla. There are forces that are blocks for the musalla and blocks towards Allah. There are forces inside of us that are antithetical, complete opposing forces. And I often say this, and I'll end with this. The reason why we are such an ajib creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is because usually in an army, in a battle, you have two opposing forces that are battling each other. And there are two different commanders leading their respective armies. That commander, for example, leads Army A. This commander leads Army B. And they don't mix, they don't match at all. The insan is so ajib that we have two armies inside of us as well. Polar opposites. We have one commander. That's the I inside of me. That I is the commander. That I is the one that can either lift this army up or that army up. In order for you to do it, you have to identify what each army stands for and the powers of each army. So yes, you have to identify the power and the effects and the dangers of the ego, of pride, of a lack of forgiveness, of narcissism. To think, should I really give this army all of its weapons? On this side, you have forgiveness, you have piety, you have humility, you have humbleness, you have mercy, you have compassion, you have forbearance, you have patience. Another army on that side. And you're looking, which one should I empower? Whichever one you empower, that's what I becomes. And that I, if not changed, leads you all the way from this world through your grave to barzakh, standing in front of Allah on the Day of Judgment, metaphorically, of course. This is an important discussion, guys, and one that we're going to break open right? On this base of a verse of Surah Hashr, verse number 19. We ask you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to accept our qaleel efforts, inshallah. We ask you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, these are the days now. This week now is the week of the nights of Qadr. Now we begin our amal tomorrow night, if not later on this week. We ask you, Allah, give us that tawfiq in these amal, these du'as, that we help us identify who we are, our weaknesses, our strengths, no one else's. It's time now to turn inward, to truly understand who I am. That's the eye that I want to take to my grave, take to barzakh, and stand in front of Allah on the Day of Judgment. Thank you very much. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.